You're watching ETN.
Hey guys, welcome to Entertainment Talk Nation. This is Rob. This video is episode 2 of the E.T.N podcast slash vlog. And we usually do this. I've been trying to do it at least once a week. I didn't get to do it last week, but this video basically we're going to pretty much be talking Game of Thrones and Avengers Endgame, as the Starks had a pretty big weekend, to say the least. Now, I want to start with Game of Thrones because obviously it was a big episode this past Sunday. I haven't reviewed the show in the last 3 seasons, not because I haven't enjoyed it or watched it, mainly because of the time crunch in my life. I just don't have the time to consistently review episodes, but I definitely wanted to talk about this episode because it was a huge episode and one that seems to be splitting the fan base down the middle. And a lot of people are even coming in today having second thoughts about their initial feelings about the episode. So I kind of want to go through it, not in too much detail, mainly just want to kind of address some of the things that have been said about the episode versus my thoughts on it. Because there's a lot of people that have been criticizing the episode for some weird things. I remember a couple of years ago when Game of Thrones was like season 2, season 3, and around the time that all the people we liked were getting killed, Robb Stark, Catelyn Stark, Ned Stark, and all these other great characters that we never wanted to see go. During that time, there was a big pushback from fans that were really getting upset about some of their favorite characters dying. And some people, of course, people threaten not to watch again, but of course they always will. And now it seems to be going in reverse. I saw a lot of people complaining that people weren't killed in this episode. And I guess, on one hand, I can understand the complaint in the sense that there looked like there were situations where certain characters were going to die, but they never did. But the other way that people are complaining is that they just wanted to see the people die, period, altogether. I guess they wanted to have that emotion that they haven't had on the show in the last couple of years. And, I guess to some degree I can understand that. But, we also have to understand that they did really kill a lot of characters in the early part of the show. And there's only a certain amount left for us to cling on to. I thought that was an interesting take. And then there's just a lot of people, I think, I don't know, in some ways I think it's legitimate. I think people legitimately feel the way they feel about the show and the episode, and that's fine. That's perfectly fine. And on other instances, when I hear some people arguing about why they hated the episode, it, to me, especially from other content creators, which I'll get into in a minute, to me it sounds more like, well, a lot of people seem to like this episode. A lot of people seem to like Game of Thrones. Maybe if I throw a negative out there, I'll get a little bit more attention. There will never be any evidence of that. Because you just can't be in somebody's head. But based on some of the arguments, I can't help but feel that I think some people are being disingenuous about what they really thought about the episode. And then there's some people who I think are walking it back for the wrong reasons, at least in my opinion. Again, I guess they're entitled to feel how they feel, but let's get into this. Now, first, one of the big arguments I'm hearing is the Dothraki horde just charging into the White Walkers, just setting it off and going in after they got their swords lit on fire. Now, I think back to when we first met the Dothraki and what they're like, their lifestyle, their confidence, things of that nature. This didn't take me by surprise too much. It really didn't. Like, did it make sense for them to do it? No. But have they ever made sense of anything they do? They just do what they do. They're barbarians, essentially. And no matter what they've been told about the Night King and the White Walkers, they don't give a shit. They think they're the hottest shit on horses, basically. And even Robert Baratheon in season 1 mentioned how nobody would dare fight them in an open field, and we saw that. We saw that last year when they attacked the Lannister caravan along with Daenerys and her dragon, and they pretty much laid waste to the Lannister caravan and that small army. So it doesn't seem to me out of the ordinary for them to just kind of maybe not listen or not take orders and feel especially after their swords are lit on fire, to just feel that need to just go out and fight. They're fighters. That's what they want to do. And no one was going to stop them. Not even Jorah was going to stop them. So I don't think, is it stupid? Yes. From a strategic standpoint, based on the plan that they had, yeah, it would be stupid for them to just run out there and expect to beat this undead army. But at the same time, like I said, they're the Dothraki. That's just what they do. Is it smart? No. But have the Dothraki ever been really smart? I mean, they don't come across as the smartest tribe in the series, the smartest group of people in the series. So it does not surprise me one bit that they just ran out to go and meet the Night King and his army head on. Now, with that said, they also needed to, their goal was to draw out the Night King, and you're not going to draw out the Night King by just sitting there and waiting for the dead to come to you. You're not going to do that. So I don't know. I think that's an argument. I think people are kind of just forgetting what the Dothraki are and how they do things. And while Daenerys is their queen, they're still their own kind of their own tribe. Like they'll listen to Daenerys, but they won't listen to Daenerys per se. When it comes to a fight, these guys are ready to fight. Period. End of story. So then there was the argument why the dragons didn't go out and burst the flames sooner when the Dothraki went into attack. Well, the plan was for the dragons to stay back. They were staying back and waiting for the Night King to make his move on Bran, and then they would go and cut off the Night King. As far as I remember from the last episode, I don't think their plan was to ever go after the dead on the open field, because they know that if they kill the Night King, they kill everybody. So they figured they stay back, hold down the fort, hope that their army can at least hold off the dead long enough so that when the Night King makes his move, they can go cut him off and kill him. Now, it didn't turn out that way because the Night King's pretty smart. The Night King knows, all right, well, I'm not going to show myself just yet. And the only reason they went after the undead when the Dothraki attacked was because Daenerys felt guilty about letting her army die. And she was not actually supposed to make that move. She was supposed to stay back no matter what. So the plan kind of went downhill. So I think there's just certain elements that people are forgetting when you talk about what their game plan was the prior episode, and then when you really kind of look back at the history of the show and the Dothraki and just how they are. They're not exactly the kind, even though the whole army follows Daenerys, they still have a leader. And, there are still plenty of men in that tribe that are not, I'm sure, not keen to listening to Daenerys. They listen to their leader who listens to Daenerys. So again, now I know that's an assumption, but that's just how I see it based on what I've seen from the Dothraki so far in this show. Now, so we move past this part, and then, there's all this thing about why are the trenches, why is the army in front of the trenches, and why are the trebuchets behind them as well and not in the front? So, this, I think, can be taken either way because, yeah, that makes sense. That's a fair argument. But if you're in the middle of a fight, right, if the army's coming forward and you have, the Unsullied and all the other men of Winterfell and all the other houses in the north, if you keep your army behind the trenches and then you fight from behind the trenches and then the army comes up to you to fight, you haven't lit the trenches yet now, they move in, it's not until they swarm you that you realize, whoa, we need to light the trenches. You can light the trenches just fine, but a good portion of the army has already gotten by it because your men are behind the trenches. You need to be in front of the trenches to assess the danger. That way, when you do need to retreat, they have to pass the trenches initially. I mean, to me, that just kind of makes sense. At least that's how I see it once again. And the same thing with the trebuchets. The trebuchets, that is your bombardment from the backhand. You don't want, those can easily be taken out if they're in the front. Cut a rope, as these knights, these undead walk by, they can cut a rope and that just kind of disassembles or disables the trebuchet altogether. So having them in the back, this allows the front line to protect them while they can still bombard the back portion of the undead army. So once they were able to assess the threat and see that these are just monsters that mindlessly attack, they don't mind climbing each other and getting speared as they make way for the other undead that are behind them. So then they decided to retreat. Now, a lot of people were complaining, or not complaining, but there were some people that mentioned how Melisandre, why she just suddenly showed up. Well, if you remember when she was talking to Varys last year at I think it was Dragonstone they were at, she was talking about leaving, but she did tell Varys that she would return because she had to, something along the lines of, and I'm paraphrasing here, but she had to die back at Winterfell or in the north, or she had to return to this place to die, something along those lines. So it shouldn't have been a surprise if you, once again, if you remember what she said, it shouldn't be a surprise as to why she's there. And then, of course, the powers. Now, she's been very inconsistent, but she's only been inconsistent in her visions and her predictions. In terms of her power and her spell casting, that's really never been into question. I mean, she doubted herself when she tried to resurrect Jon Snow, and she walked away, everybody in the room at the time walked away too soon before Jon woke up. So initially she thought she failed, but she didn't. And obviously, she has done other magic before. She did the magic curse with Gendry, which led to the death of Joffrey, the ruler of Pike, Theon's father, whose name I can't remember. Obviously, last name is Greyjoy, obviously, but I forget his first name. And then there was one other death it led to that I cannot remember. Robb Stark. So her curse on Gendry caused the death of Robb Stark, Joffrey, and Papa Greyjoy. I call him Papa Greyjoy right now. So her power has been proven. So the fact that she can light up all these swords and then light up the barracks or the blockade, for lack of a better term, to me makes perfect sense. Perfectly feasible, Lord of Light power and all that kind of stuff. So then the other, and I saw this coming from a lot of people. Now, a lot of people were complaining about not being able to see. I agree with that. That's a fair argument. That's a fair assessment. I was kind of also upset about the fact that you could hardly see anything. I know they're supposed to be giving the effect that it's very dark and you can't see them until they're like right in your face. But I mean, you can still make it so that the viewer of the show can see what's going on, but you can portray the actors as acting as if they can't see what's going on. I don't know why they didn't do that. I think they wanted to do that to build suspense, which to some effect, at least for me, it worked a little bit. So, but I do really think they should have kicked up the gamma for this show. I mean, seriously, the series so far this year has been really, really dark. And when I mean dark, I don't mean thematically. I mean, literally, it's hard to see things at night when they're filming at night. So now other parts of the episode that people were complaining about, or that I've seen complaints about, was, and this kind of baffles me a little bit, but I guess Arya. A lot of people didn't think Arya should have gotten the kill, or a lot of people didn't think, not that she didn't earn the capabilities that she has, but I guess a lot of people suddenly think the story is about Arya out of nowhere, and I don't know where that comes from. I think we've seen enough of Arya over the seasons to understand that she has quite a fighting capability. Now remember, a lot of people, I don't know what it is, it's like people seem to forget, Arya's been training since season 1 when she started training with the water dancer. And from that point forward, when she was finally with the Hound for such a long time, while he didn't necessarily train her, he kind of toughened her up. And, he was criticizing some of her technique when she was practicing her water dancing. But I feel that he was definitely an influence that gave her a little bit more thicker skin. And from there, you have her training with the Faceless Men, who are just deadly assassins. And she barely survived the waif. And she had to deal with the waif. She had to, so she knows how to kill. At this point, she's at her peak level in terms of skill. And so that doesn't surprise me. That scene where she's twirling the spear and she's whipping everybody's ass, that's something we haven't really seen from her. It surprises me. Like, some people thought, like, we've seen all these crazy kick-ass moments with Arya, but we really haven't. Not to that degree. This, to me, was a payoff of all those seasons when we watched her train. So I don't know where people... I just think people have a very short memory about what you've seen on this show over the last couple of years. Again, I know it sounds like I'm shilling for the episode, but I will criticize something to death if I think it's really bad. I just don't think this episode was as bad as people are making it out to be, and I'm trying to find if you don't like it, you don't like it. I mean, there's nothing about that. I'm not trying to change people's minds, but I'm trying to give at least a counter argument to what people are complaining about. So then we move on to inside Winterfell when the dead are in there. They're kind of strolling around. That I thought was a great change of pace from all the fighting because it gave a sense of dread, a very horror movie kind of sense. So that was really cool. Now, in terms of the deaths in this episode, I understand. I definitely concur and understand with people's complaints about certain characters looking like they were on death's door and somehow surviving. Brienne is a good example. Sam was a great example. Jaime, Podrick, all these guys were in the thick of it, and somehow they made it out alive. I don't know how they did it. When you see how quick the undead are, when you see that all the undead are equipped with daggers and knives, to be fighting all 5 or 6 at a time without getting stabbed, to me is a little bit unbelievable. So I definitely agree with a lot of people there. They obviously did that to up the tension and up the drama. I thought it was effective, but I definitely do think it was a bad approach. I think instead of making each of these people swarmed, they should have maybe put them on the run and fighting as they run. And then finally, when they're all cornered, looking like they're about to get killed, that's when we have the whole shatter scene. So I think I definitely agree with people complaining about that. That was a bad move on the creator's part. It just was too unbelievable when you see so many people just getting killed easily. And maybe they're trying to elevate just how heroic these characters are. Now, you can argue that it's plot armor. I guess that's fine. That's a fair argument. But we're on episode 3 of 3 episodes left, I think they said, or 4 episodes left. So if you kill off Jaime and Podrick and Brienne and whoever all in this moment, you're really thinning your roster before having to deal with what is the big threat, which is Cersei. And this segues into my next point. A lot of people are also complaining how they've been building the Night King and this and that and all these years, and this is how he goes down. Well, yes, they have been building the Night King, but the Night King has been and will always be, and I thought this was pretty clear, a subplot. The show is called Game of Thrones, not Game of Undead. And the Night King has always been a subplot. That's been a subplot of the North, and the North trying to team up with everybody else to take them out. But the point of the show is Game of Thrones. This is about Westeros. This is about the Iron Throne. The Night King was, I think, a cool story that everybody got invested in, and it kind of maybe made them believe that the Night King meant more to the story than he actually did, because they shared a history. And sharing a history doesn't mean that that's the main story. It's just trying to give you an understanding of what kind of threat the Night King actually is. So I think that's something that I hate to say this, but that's what we call your own expectations kind of, it's kind of like when you see a movie, you're overhyped for it and you go to the movie and it's not actually a bad movie, but because you were so overhyped and your expectations are so high, you think it's bad. I don't know what people were expecting from the Night King. I think people were upset that it ended in 1 episode, but with 6 episodes, you only have so much time before you have to set up the next, the Endgame, so to speak. So, and plus the Night King has done a lot of shit in these seasons. I think people forget. I mean, Hardhome. That was a fantastic episode. All the other episodes that involved the White Walkers and the Night King, I think they got a pretty ample story for people to understand where they're coming from. I think they got ample screen time over the years, and we've seen a number of battles against the White Walkers, including last year when Dany came to save them and the Night King took over one of her dragons. So, I think the 2-year gap really kind of fucked with people. That's what I think. Like, I think those 2 years away really made people forget about all the other things that happened on the show involving the Night King and the White Walkers, because to me, it didn't feel like, oh, he just ended here. To me, it felt like, man, he finally ended because of all the other things that he's done. all the way back to when he was taking Craster's sons and making them baby White Walkers. So I think I don't think that's my opinion. Once again, I don't think that's a fair criticism. I mean, the Night King has done a lot of damage in the North. Leading up to this episode. I mean, he got as far south as Winterfell, all the way from beyond the wall. And he's caused a lot of damage, and he's done a lot of bad things to all the land further north of Winterfell. So, when you consider just how relentless that army is, I couldn't see it going beyond 2 episodes. There's no way. There's no way. We've seen that army fight before. When Hardhome was a perfect example of just how swiftly the undead can dispatch of any army. And then on top of that, after they dispatch them, then the people who died get raised and the army becomes bigger. And we saw that in this episode. Right as the Night King was heading towards the tree and to where Bran was, he raised all those dead people on the field, which led to Jorah Mormont's death. And once again, I think the deaths, obviously, they weren't huge like on a Jaime or a Brienne scale, but I think Jaime and Brienne's story is more linked to Cersei than it is the Night King. They have no, they have no link to the Night King like the Starks do. This was the Starks' story, coming to an end in terms of Winterfell and all the North, and winter is coming. Now it's time to end the Game of Thrones, which is what Cersei has, and that, I think, is, I don't know. Again, in my opinion, it's just done right. Now, as far as Arya getting the kill, I think it was a good surprise. I'm not disappointed she got the kill. A lot of people were saying, oh, all this stuff Jon Snow was brought to back and for what? For nothing. I mean, again, have people been watching this show at all? I mean, I didn't watch any repeats the last 2 years either, and I remember just how impactful Jon Snow's return has been. Battle of the Bastards. If he wasn't there to fight that war, we would have pretty much either a severely abused and beaten Sansa or dead, or she'd be pregnant with a husband that she's just terrified of. Bringing the armies together to face off against the Night King. Bringing Dany into the fold, who, however you want to criticize how it happened, without those dragons, a lot of those dead would still be climbing the wall of Winterfell. So for people to really say that Jon Snow got brought back for nothing, I mean, you got to go back and watch some of these seasons. I mean, come on. That just is bluntly not fair, not a fair criticism, and very disingenuous. It's just a dumb argument. Let's just say it like that. It's just a dumb argument. So, and he can't be the hero all the time. He can't. There's no way he can be a hero all the time. And for Arya to step up and get the kill, I think that's perfectly fine. The important thing is that it was a Stark that did it. Whether it was Arya, Sansa by some accident, or Jon, the important thing, or even Bran, I thought Bran was going to pop out of the chair with a dagger and stab him out of nowhere. That's what I thought initially. But had it been any of those four, to me, that's poetic. That's how it's supposed to be. If it had been Theon, I could understand people complaining. But it was Arya. And the important thing is that the Night King is slayed by a Stark. It doesn't necessarily have to be Jon Snow. Now, I know a lot of people wanted to see a Jon Snow versus Night King sword fight. And I admit, I would have loved to have seen that. But we didn't get that. That would have been the obvious choice. Not that it would have been a bad obvious choice, but it would have been an obvious choice. And I think they took another route. And I think it was a good route that they took. I really do. I think it was a good route. It showed that the Starks are stronger together. The wolf pack is strongest when they're together. Paraphrasing, but everybody knows the quote by now. So, yeah. And, it's funny. There's a lot of big channels that were saying some of this stuff. I mean, Angry Joe walked back his complete review. I checked out his review earlier, and then, he was very animated, very excited. He was like 8 out of 10 and this and that. And then later on that day, or today I should say, he came back and completely walked back his whole review. And I found that a little confusing. It's like, I know you're down from your high. We do all know that happens when you see something you like and you're very excited. You don't really take the time to assess what you watched. And then he came back, and I guess he said he assessed it, and he didn't like it. And I was like, all right, I mean, but some of the points he was making as to why he didn't like it, I thought were just, I think it's debatable. It's debatable. It really depends on what you remember from the show and what you view. I think a lot of people got blindsided by the idea of the Night King, that they felt that the Night King was the end all be all, and he never was. He never was the end all be all. He was just a major subplot. The end all be all is the throne, the Game of Thrones. So, and then another content creator, Jeremy from Geeks and Gamer, who just, I mean, it was like just watching. It was like verbal diarrhea. It was watching, and it's sad. And then for me to say that about Jeremy is a big deal because I actually like that channel. But he had a 5-minute rant as to why the episode was actually trash. And again, opinions. Everybody has their opinion. But his argument just wasn't very cohesive for me. Like, it didn't make any sense. Again, and it's not because it's not about really right or wrong. To me, it sounds like he just doesn't remember a lot of things from the show. If you just go back and look at some of the episodes and pay attention to some of the details, you can understand why things turned out the way they turned out. At least, again, in my opinion, I'm sure there's going to be plenty of people who disagree with me, and that's fine. But I just, I do agree with the plot armor argument that people are making. I do agree with the fact that it was too goddamn dark. But I don't agree with the fact that it should have been Jon, or that Jon was a waste to bring back and all that. To me, all that is like, did you even pay attention to everything Jon Snow was doing from the time he got resurrected to now? So, yeah, so it's just that. And some other content creators that came out and just basically trashed the show. It's just, I think it's just a matter of people didn't see what they wanted to see. That's, to me, what it comes down to. And I think people got blindsided and got very infatuated with the idea of the Night King because he really was never the main part of the story. He never was. He was just a very good subplot, and that's that. So, but anyway, Starks won. Arya got the kill. I love it. Good stuff. Moving on. Endgame. $350 million later. Like I said, it was a good weekend for the Starks. Now, one Stark in particular, of course. Now I'm going to be talking spoilers going forward. We're not going to stay with Endgame too long. I had a whole podcast about it that's up on the channel if you want to check that out. This is just me kind of mashing together two big events in one weekend, one being Endgame and, of course, one being the third episode of Game of Thrones. $350 million, which is just incredible. Incredible, and also $1.2 billion worldwide. So the question remains now as to whether or not it can catch Titanic and Avatar. I think it has a very good chance. We'll get a pretty good idea this weekend. If they have a drop of 50% or less, I think they're going to do it. But if they exceed 50% in drop off, then I think they're going to fall a little short. Time remains to be seen. It is a long movie. There are some people who were not happy with that movie as well. Again, I think it's a matter of expectation versus kind of paying attention to the storyline and where we are at this point. One of the things people complained about was the Hulk. And I want to get into the Hulk in a little bit more detail than I did on the live stream, because this is probably the number one complaint of the movie right now. And I get it. We all love seeing Hulk smash. We all love seeing just Hulk do Hulk things. But it can get tired after a while. If you just have Hulk running around like a madman just wrecking shit, for some people, it can get tired. Now, maybe it's not tired for big Hulk fans or big comic book fans. But again, this is an argument I make when we talk about Godzilla, King of the Monsters. And I'll make the same argument for Avengers or Marvel movies. There are a slew of comic book fans that love these movies. But that pales in comparison to the general audience. And the general audience in any big movie genre is always the key to making revenue. The creators of these movies, the writers, the producers, directors, they already know you're going to go watch it. They don't give a shit about you. That's just plain and simple. I don't mean to sound that way, but they don't give a shit about the hardcore fan. Some of you guys even know this because you'll get a movie that is completely not what you wanted. And understandable. But considering Marvel has always done pretty good fan service, but in terms of revenue and looking at making money, what kind of, doing their market research, they know that they're going to get the money from drawing in a new crowd, a new viewer. They already take in the hardcore fans into their assessment. When they assess their potential revenue for a movie, they're already taking in the hardcore fans. They know they got you. They don't give a shit about you. They give a shit about trying to get the general audience. So all this money that Marvel's been making for the last 10 years is all generated by the general audience. And you can see that by how much their revenue has grown over the years because they bring in new viewers. It's not the comic book viewers. The comic book viewers have been there since day one. The general audience has been coming in over the years and building this empire. So the general audience doesn't want to see the Hulk smash every fucking time. They don't. They don't want to see that. It gets boring after a while. It gets taxing. Why do you think the first initial Hulk was so bad? There was really nothing about the character, and all he did was Hulk smash, and of course the effect was horrible. So you have to keep building the character. The character has to keep developing. And when you consider that right now they can't make a solo Hulk movie thanks to Universal, they have to find ways to integrate the character in other ways that fans, or new fans rather, can relate to. Having him just run around Hulk smash is just not going to do it, and it's going to get tired. So I think what they did with Hulk here was they made a culmination to his character. They brought his character to some, I don't want to say an end per se, but the problem with the Hulk and Banner, the whole problem with the Hulk and Banner has always been their stark differences. One is a crazy, mad, psycho, super strong behemoth, and the other one is a nerdy doctor who's like, who's into, physics and all that kind of stuff. Complete opposites. So how do you bring these two beings together in harmony? And while we didn't get it in detail, I think the way Marvel would have liked to have done it, or the way we would have liked to have seen it, the point is that Hulk, the character, and Banner, the character, they found a mutual agreement. They found a way to work together, to live together, to be cohesive. And that's the point. That's the point of the character, is that search for that. And so the fact that he didn't run around going Hulk smash, I didn't think that was a big deal, because why? I've seen it tons of times. I like this Hulk. I already know that this Hulk is capable of doing what Hulk has done before. But now we have a different Hulk that can work in two fashions. So, and again, just my opinion, I just think, people were a little tough on that. Now, Tony Stark was obviously the big death in the movie. For some reason, Romanoff's death did not affect me that much. I don't know why. It's not that it was bad. It was the right choice and it was a good scene, but I just didn't, I don't know. And it's not that I'm not into the character. I love Scarlett Johansson, and I loved Black Widow since she first stepped on screen in Iron Man 2. So it's just one of those things. But it was a big weekend for the Starks. I mean, Tony made the huge sacrifice to pretty much wipe off Thanos and his army from the face of existence. And the Starks of Winterfell defeated the Night King. So, but going back to the Avengers, sticking there, I thought it was a fantastic movie. I do think they did a good job kind of wrapping a lot of characters up. Again, there's people upset about certain things and certain ways that things were handled. I think everything was handled perfectly. I think when you look at Thor's story arc and how he kind of let himself go, that makes perfect sense for a character who's had his brother get killed, his father died, his mother got killed, his sister was a psychotic wench that he had to lead to her death. He lost his land. He lost half his people. I mean, how do you come back from that? And yet still, even with that, he still suited up, even with his little beer belly, and got out there and fought hard. So, and I mentioned these two characters, the Hulk and Thor, because these are the two characters that people are complaining about the most in terms of their representation in the movie. However, I also think that people shouldn't worry too much, because we're definitely going to see another Thor movie. That's been all but confirmed. And I'm pretty sure this is not the last time we've seen the Hulk. So I think we're going to see more from these characters going forward. Thor may very well sneak in to be the next leader of these Avengers. I know there's been a lot of talk of Captain Marvel, but I'm still not convinced with that. I don't think Captain Marvel should be leading the Avengers. Brie Larson's having dreams about directing an all-female Avengers. Good luck with that. It's not to say that I wouldn't want to see it. I just don't want to see it directed by Brie Larson. I'm not against an Avengers female movie. If they want to do that, I'll check it out. As long as it happens organically. I don't want them to push that SJW shit. I don't talk about that on this channel nearly as much as a lot of other content creators. But believe me, I'm on the same page with them. I don't like that shit either. But it doesn't mean that it doesn't mean that I'm against an Avengers all female. I think they've got great characters that they can work with. You got Scarlet Witch, who personally I think should lead the way in that. Valkyrie is very cool. Okoye, even she could be like the Captain America of the group because she's got no powers. Obviously we would have had Romanoff if she didn't die. So, and I know. Oh, and this want to mention the Romanoff movie is supposed to be a prequel. There's actually people. I thought everybody knew this, but a lot of people are not aware. I've read some forums and even watched some videos where people are like, "How could they kill her if she's having a movie next year?" Well, her movie's going to be a prequel, so that's the reason why you're getting that. But in terms of the next phase, I got a video coming out this week where I'm going to go into a little bit more detail about talking about the 5 villains that I think Marvel could use in the next saga. I did talk about a little bit on the live stream, but I know not everybody watches the live stream. It's a very long video, just like this one. So I did kind of talk about it I did make a video about it, just that, and that'll be coming out this week. And we are going to wrap this video up. So we got that coming. We also have another Fringe Entertainment coming on Thursday. Godzilla 30 for 30 starts Wednesday for all you Godzilla fans here on the channel. So some of you already saw the first episode. I put it up for 24 hours last week. But for those of you who haven't seen it, definitely check it out. It's going to debut this Wednesday. And then every day after that, leading up to the release of Godzilla King of the Monsters, pretty much the day before. So Thursday the 30th will be the last episode for 30 for 30. So that starts this Wednesday once again. And, of course, we have our live stream Friday night, which is very similar to this format here. The only difference is it's live and I get to interact with you guys. But that's pretty much it. And then we got some other regular videos coming out as well. So, but that's going to be it for this podcast. I just kind of wanted to mainly talk about Game of Thrones, touch up a little bit on Endgame. It was a big weekend for the Starks. All Starks heroes this weekend, from Winterfell to Earth and their mightiest heroes. Also, the one thing I want to mention too on Endgame, one last thing. I don't know if this is true or not, but I've seen pictures posted and it looks pretty legit. But apparently, Howard the Duck was briefly cameoed and an Easter egg at the end of Endgame, when they were about to face off against Thanos. So it looks like it's legit. I don't know if it is or not, but just to give you guys a heads up, maybe that's something you want to take a look at, see if that's real. But that's it for this podcast, where we just covered this weekend's events, the big events, of course, Game of Thrones, Endgame, and Endgame making a lot of money. So anyway, mention in the comments how you felt about Game of Thrones if you watched the show, and also let me know how you felt about Endgame. And I will see you guys this week. This is Rob signing off for ETN, where we don't do news, we just talk entertainment. Take it easy.
Thank you for watching ETN. Don't forget to subscribe and join the Nation Facebook page.